Well, hello, everyone. I'm Helen Power. I'm the Engineering and Science Librarian here at USask. And today we're going to be talking about a citation management software called Zotero. So if you want to follow along on your laptop during the session, you can, if you haven't already, you can sign up for a free account through Zotero.org. Actually, I'm going to pop that into the chat so you can find it. Well, actually, maybe I'll ask, since there's only a couple of people in this session right now. Do you have Zotero already? Are you just curious? Like, what are your purposes for coming? Are you just curious to see what the program's like? Do you want to use it for your research project? If you want to just hop into the chat, and then I can kind of get a sense of what to focus on during the talk today. So one of you says that you would like to get better at using it for research. That's good. So you already have Zotero? Okay. And I'll just wait another maybe 5-10 seconds in case the other person wants to comment.
I'm actually in the lab right now, so
right. So I've added the Zotero link in the chat if you want to follow along. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. It's a little difficult when you're on your computer and you only have the one screen to follow along with the program at the same time, so I totally get that. But it's important to note that if you're going to download this program, there's actually two things that you have to download. There is the Zotero app for your computer, which is like just the platform itself. But then there's also a plugin for whatever your browser is that you like to use. So if you use Chrome or Firefox or Safari, there is a plugin that you use, and I'll show you what it looks like later, but when you click on that button on your plugin, it helps you to download whatever article you're reading into the platform that you have. Yeah?
What we're seeing on our screen is your presentation mode.
Oh, no, really? Okay, all right. How do I close presentation mode?
Stop, share.
Yeah, okay.
And then share again.
Yeah, I'll just share it as a PowerPoint. It's just because I was going to switch to, yeah, because I'm going to be switching between Chrome and switching. So maybe I'll just keep sharing the screen. I mean, I don't have that many slides. I've got like 4 slides. Okay, yeah. I just have the slides to kind of introduce it and have some of the critical links, and then we can go into, I'll just open a blank tab there. Okay, oops, go back. Spoilers, that's what Zotero looks like. Okay, all right. So for those of you who don't know, a citation manager is a software that you can use that allows you to organize your citations, organize all your PDFs and all of your citations to books and websites and different types of resources. And it's a really easy, quick way to actually cite those resources in your papers. So if you're using Microsoft Word, or if you're using Google Docs or any of those types of word processing softwares, it's actually really, really easy to use the citation manager to cite within those documents. And it's also very useful if you have to switch between different citation styles. If your prof, for instance, says to use APA, but then switches to a different style, you can easily just switch it with a click of a button, as opposed to actually having to go through and manually change all the periods and commas and everything. And citation managers like Zotero are really useful for if you're working on collaborative projects and you need to share your resources with your co-authors or your fellow partners in your project. So I'm going to show you how to use it. So today we're talking about Zotero, but there are a few other programs that you can use, like Mendeley, which is a free program you can find online as well. And there's also EndNote Basic, which is free, and then EndNote Desktop, which you have to pay for. And then there's also RefWorks listed here, which we don't subscribe to here at the institution, but some people will purchase their own version of that. Great, so I got ahead of myself. So there is the Zotero app, which I mentioned before, as well as the connector for your web browser. And you have to really make sure that you're getting both of those. Otherwise, Zotero won't work as well for you. So I'm just going to actually take you in to show you what actually Zotero looks like. So I assume everybody, I'm sharing my screen so you can see Zotero, right? All right, awesome. Yeah, unfortunately the font doesn't get bigger. So yeah, unfortunately, I've tried that before to make the font bigger for classes. Even for my own reading, sometimes I don't know. I have glasses, but they're for distance, but this is so small, sometimes I'm like, oh. Anyway, all right, so this is the general platform. So there's this pane along the side here, which is kind of like your menu. And then there's this bigger pane here, and then there's a smaller pane here for when you select on specific items. So my library, that is the collection of all of the resources that I have that I've added to Zotero. And then I can create different folders for different projects, for different reading lists, for instance, for the different things that I'm interested in. So for instance, I created this folder called Images for Presentations, and it's got a bunch of pictures that I found online that I like for my presentations, but then it helps me to easily cite them when I'm teaching, so I can make sure I have my little retrieved from link whenever I'm giving a presentation. So what I might do, I might actually just go into Google Scholar right now and show you how to download an article. So you can just go to Google Scholar, you can go to the USask USearch, you can go to any database, you can get resources from any place that you find them, including, as I mentioned before, I had pictures from the internet, so you can easily download those as well. So if I want to download an article into my platform, so let's pretend we're working from scratch and I want to create my own folder. So I'm just going to call this one Sure, so that I can delete whatever articles sometimes I find random articles and I'm like, why is this in here? And I was like, oh, I was demonstrating how to use the program. Okay, so let's just say like artificial intelligence, that is something I'm interested in. So if you use Google Scholar before, you're probably familiar with how to go through these results. So let's say, okay, this article is of interest to me. It's pretty easy. It's already got a PDF. So I'll just click on that. And it looks like my Zotero plugin is not showing up. So we're gonna actually download the Zotero plugin, together, and I'll show you how to do that. This is a new laptop. So make sure that you're going to the actual Zotero website. So I'm in Chrome, so I want to install the Chrome connector and add it to my Chrome. Great, so that was pretty quick. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Cancel. It wants to sync it with all my other connectors. Where'd it go? Seriously. There we go, pinned it. Okay, so that was a little bit of troubleshooting live for you. Make sure you pin your connectors or they won't show up sometimes. Okay, so this little button here is what I'm gonna press whenever I'm on a website that I want to visit or that I want to save to my Zotero. So it's important to make sure that you have whatever folder you want it to save to open in Zotero. And depending, sometimes it will actually ask you which folder you want to save it to. So I'm going to just click that little Zotero button. Sometimes the little image changes. Sometimes it's a little sheet of paper. Sometimes it looks like a folder. Sometimes it looks like a Z. So I'm just going to click on that. Oops. This is annoying. I'm going to put that down there. And it is not doing anything. Wonderful. Okay. So again, we're going to be troubleshooting together. So what you could do is just download the article itself into your downloads folder, show it in folder, and then you can easily just drag it in. And it should have worked, but it did not work. So we can just drag it into the folder and it will save it there. And see, it saved it with a weird name, but if you right click, oh, it actually found the data on its own. But if it does save with a weird name, you can just click retrieve metadata and it will actually find the metadata for you. So that was a bad example because it was actually a bit of a trickier article. It should have been able to grab the thing off the internet itself, but you can easily just save it into your downloads folder. And then I can actually delete it from my downloads folder because it made a local copy in the Zotero folder. So I don't actually even need to keep that version in my downloads folder. There's no need to keep that. Okay, oops. Let's just go back. Dock to top, there we go. I don't know, I can't see the top of my screen when it does that. Usually it disappears when you don't hover over it for a while. But this is a new computer, so everything is wrong. Control-Shift-T, there we go, go back to this. So I'm just gonna go back to Zotero, to my Google Scholar results. So now there's the same article, but I'm not gonna do the same article because that's weird. I'm gonna go with this one, but I'm gonna go for the full text at the USask library version. So whenever you make a search in USearch, you've probably seen this before. It tells you available online, and there's a few different places where you can get it. So I'm just gonna click on that, go, and then it brings me to this page. And now at this point, I should be able to click download, yep, and it's recognizing everything for me. So, but it doesn't seem to wanna get the full text, interesting. So I'm just gonna click enter. Oh, it did get the full text. No, it got the snapshot. So basically here's the title, and it pulled all the metadata for me. So that's still really useful for when I need to cite the resource or if I want to look at it later. But what I can do to actually make sure that I get the PDF is actually go into the PDF itself and try again. Nope, it didn't want to do it either. Am I not signed in? Well, I'm reading it though. Okay, so it might be because I'm not signed into the library. Although, no, it says USask right in the corner. Yeah, I'm signed in. It's because I'm on campus, I don't have to log in. If you're on campus, you will be required to be prompted to put in your NSID and password, but if you're on campus, that usually doesn't happen. So again, it looks like troubleshooting did not want to do it. So again, we just do what I did before, where I download it into my downloads folder, show it my folder, oops, and then put it in here, and it will probably identify the information, and it did identify it for me. And actually, this is another good example of what you do too, because I already downloaded this article 3 separate times. But if I go into duplicate items, it will recognize these duplicates. And if I can click them, be very careful because sometimes articles will have the same title, or sometimes an author might use very similar titles and have the same author name. So just make sure that you're merging items that actually are the same thing. And you can click merge these 2 items. So there's a couple of other articles that I should have done that for as well. Wow, merge 3 items for this one. All right, so we can go back to here. And it looks interesting. So it looks like, even though I downloaded this article from the same place, so this is, oh no, this is the one that I wanted to delete. So you can easily just, you can either remove, be careful, you can remove the item from collection, but it'll still be in your library, or move item to the trash. So I'm gonna move that to the trash, because that was just the citation. So I think the 2 articles that I had looked at both had the same title almost. They're just different authors. So it's a little bit kind of complicated, but now I can actually go back to my downloads folder and just delete that article because I don't need it. And so that's a demonstration of just how to add things to your Zotero. So now once you're in Zotero and you have a few things added, so I mentioned before that there's these folders along the side, and you can actually add subfolders along here as well, depending on how you want to organize your resources, depending on what you're working on. So for instance, if you're working on a project, you might want to have a larger folder for that project, and then maybe have a subfolder for your lit review, just so you can find the things. Sometimes I'll make a subfolder saying not yet read, and then I'll shift everything up as I read through the different articles, and it just feels, you feel that accomplishment, kind of like when you check things off a to-do list. And it's important to note too that these are, while they look like folders, they're not actually treated as folders by Zotero. They're treated as more like playlists. So you can have one article in multiple folders, and you're not creating duplicates of that article. You're just having different places where you can find that article or resource. So we have these 2 articles here, but let's say if you have a resource, like say an old article that doesn't necessarily have a PDF available online that you just read in read in, say, the book, or maybe you even scanned it. If you scanned it, you can easily add it the way I showed you, where you can add an article through just dragging and dropping it. But if you want to say add a book, just so you have that citation, so you can add it to the different bibliographies that you're working on, you can actually just click on that and you can add all the information that you need manually. Or if you find that book, say in USearch or something like that, you can click the add to Zotero and see how much information it can draw itself. Now, sometimes the information that it draws will be not 100% accurate, and you do have to double check. And what I say is, when you're double checking, usually me personally, I'll double check at the very end of a project when I'm working on my bibliography, and it's very tempting to make your edits in the bibliography. But if you make your edits within Zotero itself, you're ensuring that anytime in the future that you reference that resource, the information will be accurate. So some things to check would be the names of the authors. So sometimes, especially for, say, science papers where there's a lot of authors, some authors might get dropped. Sometimes I've noticed the issue number might get dropped, so you want to go to the original web page just to double check that, and it provides you with the URL. So it's really easy to go back to the web page where you got that resource just to double check all of the references, because unfortunately it won't be 100%. It's not always 100% accurate. And so there's also this little magic wand button here as well, and you can add items by identifier. So let's say your prof or someone gave you a list of references and they have DOIs. So I don't know if you're familiar with the word DOI, but basically it's a digital object identifier, and it's a unique number that's associated with a journal article. So if you search for that DOI, you will find that specific journal article. And so that's the same for ISBNs, that's for books. And then there's a couple other numbers here, like PMIDs, which is for PubMed, which is a specific database. So if you have a very specific number, you can easily copy and paste and add it in here. So if your prof gave you a list of references and you've got the titles, you don't have to search the titles in Google Scholar and try to find the articles that way. You can do it this way to make sure that you're capturing the article correctly, because as we saw before with artificial intelligence in medicine, there's 2 different articles by 2 different authors that had the same title. So it just makes life a lot easier. So once I have an article, let's say I want to read it, I can just double click it and it'll open it in my PDF reader, and I can just read that. And there's also some features along the side here. So we've got the info. So this is all the info that you need to cite it. But there's also the feature of adding notes. So you can add some notes for whatever you're thinking when you're reading a resource. This is really useful if you are working on a lit review, you're reading a lot of resources, you're making notes. Usually I'll make a spreadsheet, you'll make a spreadsheet or make a Word doc with a table saying, I read this article, this is the information I got from it, and then kind of separating out your own thoughts as well so that you know what your thoughts are versus what is fact that you are citing from that paper. But you can also do that within here, which makes it a lot easier. In the past, I've found random statistics that I've jotted down that when reading journal articles. And then I'm wondering, okay, but which article did I get that from? I need to cite this now. So it makes life a little bit easier when you're kind of just doing that initial reading stage. There's also the tags. So sometimes articles will come with tags already built in, because Zotero will pull the tags from the metadata from whatever website you grabbed it from. But you can also add some tags too, just to make things a bit more findable. And then there's the related. So you can add some related resources to there if you want. I don't usually use that feature. I'll use the notes most commonly, but that's something that you can check out. Okay. So with Zotero, so this is a program you can download to your computer, right? But there is actually, if you want to go online, you can make an account, and that is really, really useful, because what it does is it will sync what you find and have downloaded onto your computer onto that cloud platform. So, and this little sync button just does the syncing for you. And this is really useful too, because if you are on using a different computer or a different device, you can access your library from anywhere. So you don't need to be using that same device all the time. So if you're, say, using a library in the or if you're using a computer in the library, for instance, and you want to check and access your library of articles, you can easily do that just by logging in. And so it will sync across devices. And sometimes too, I know some people will have it, they download the app for their phone, but they made it so it doesn't sync full text, because you don't necessarily want a whole lot of full text on your phone, but then they can easily read through articles on their phone when they're on the go. They just click the link and then go to the website and download it that way. So there's a bunch of different ways. I don't know if you have any questions about just this general, oh, actually I'll show you right here as well. So one of the benefits of creating that account online is that you can add different people and create these group libraries. So I have a couple of private group libraries. So those are just only the people I've invited to those libraries are allowed to contribute to them. But you can create general libraries online where anybody could contribute articles if you wanted. But basically I have these for a few different projects that I've been working on. So for instance, I was working on engineering entrepreneurship project with a colleague. So I just put all of we were doing research into American universities, and we've got a whole bunch of websites. So these are a lot of websites. So it really makes it a lot easier to just kind of double click and it'll take me to that website. Because we were looking for information on startups and everything from specific universities in the States. So even though these are not journal articles in our project, they are, this is still a really good way for us to be organizing all the information. So like, for example, annual report, mentorship funding, stuff like that. These are all links with full text, shows me along the side here, but also it creates a snapshot too, which is really useful for if you're using anything from a website, because you don't know when that website's going to be taken down. So I've got this kind of saved snapshot of what that website looked like at the time when I read it, so that I know when I'm citing it, I can add that retrieve from date in my citation, and it will do that for me manually, or not manually, automatically, sorry. But it helps me to keep track of that information to make sure that I don't have to keep, if stuff disappears from the internet, I still can cite it and I still have that kind of evidence or proof that that's what the website said back when I was reading it. So I share these with a couple of different colleagues, and these are really useful. So you do have to make an online account if you want to use the group libraries feature, so that you can both kind of share resources within these folders together with one another for your different projects. Yeah, so group libraries are really fantastic for if you're doing any kind of collaborative work, but then again, everybody has to be on the same citation management software. So if your colleagues are using a different one, like EndNote Basic or EndNote Desktop, then you might have to switch over. And I'm not as knowledgeable. I don't know if you're working with someone with EndNote Desktop, if you can use the free version or not. I have no idea. That's something to Google if you decide. But you're here for Zotero, so I'm going to assume that you want to use Zotero, which I know about. All right. Okay. So I think I might show you a bit about citing now, if you're ready for that. Okay, let's open Microsoft Word. Okay, so I just opened a blank Word. Oops. Okay, so there's a few different ways that you can easily cite, but what I want to show you first is you go into the edit and then it's preferences. It's actually kind of, I feel like it's a little bit of a dumb spot to be putting it, but it lets you choose what your preferred citation style is. So you can pick that automatic citation style, so it'll always use this citation style whenever you're citing, and I usually go with the American Psychological Association 7th edition. But you can also click, so it gives you a bunch of the most common ones, but you can also click get additional styles, and sometimes specific journals. So if you're trying to cite with a specific journal, sometimes they'll even have a style that you can upload into Zotero. I haven't come across that myself, but I've read that is a thing. Or usually if there is a style for a specific journal, it'll usually be very, very similar to another style, and you can just make those slight adjustments yourself. So, I'm not sure why this is so, this is so big. Okay, so I'm gonna pick American Psychological Association and citation options. So I can include URLs of papers and references. So I'm gonna do that. Okay, so actually I'll show you the easy way to make a quick list right now. So I've got this, got these 2 articles in that blank book that I'm gonna delete. We started to make a book, but we didn't do that. So one thing you can do is just highlight a couple of resources, click copy bibliography, and then say, like, if your prof is like, what have you been reading? You'll be like, well, this is what I've been reading. Like, look super professional by providing full citations. So that's just a really, really quick way to quickly create a citation, but that's not what you want to do if you're working on a journal article, or if you're working on a literature review or anything like that. Okay, I'm gonna actually shift this down too so I can actually see the top of the screen. This is a pain. Okay, there we go. I don't know if everyone else can see that, that toolbar that literally takes out a solid inch of the top of my 5-inch screen. Oh man, it's killing me. Okay, you know what, it doesn't even really matter if the thing is, oh my gosh. Yeah, I was like, I don't even, hide video, oh shoot. Hide video panel, okay, that was the other panel. Floating, oh my goodness, there we go. Escape, okay, so I press escape to get it back. Whew. Okay, so let's say I'm working on my paper. Okay, according to the people who did the paper, okay, let's just write some gibberish. Okay, so you see right up here, I've got the Zotero plugin, and it automatically downloaded for on this computer. Sometimes it doesn't automatically download, so you might just have to Google Zotero Word plugin, and it'll give you how to download it. But when I downloaded Zotero, it automatically came this time. So what I'm going to do is say add edit citation. So you want to use this feature as opposed to just copying a citation from Zotero. Because what it does is if I make an edit in Zotero, say I notice, oh, the volume number is wrong or something like that, it will sync up, the changes will sync up to Microsoft Word whenever I make those changes and I click the refresh button here. But also it'll recognize what I've been citing within the paper to populate that bibliography list at the very end. So I'm gonna actually go back with the American Psychological Association. And then it brings me this search box. So I'm going to start searching artificial intelligence or search the author name or something like that. Make sure you're picking the right one. Sure, that seems good. Press enter and it gives me that. And then I can add my period and then I can keep writing. And you see right here, it kind of has that little anchor there for me. And you can actually edit this a little bit as well. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do the according to again. I'm just such a fabulous writer. Okay. So that was Hamlet. I'm going to do this one instead and press enter. But you can actually edit this out a little bit as well. So I can remove that bracket, you know, to follow the actual citation style of doing according to Ramesh et al. 2004, which is how you do it when you're doing it in text within the text itself. 25% of machines kill. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So now once I'm at the very end and I've got my references list, I can quickly just click add edit bibliography and it goes through the paper, recognizes all these little tags, and then it populates the list for me. And then if I go through, let's say, for example, let's go to this one and let's just say, oh, that's not their name. Or let's say it's volume, I don't know, 90, they got that wrong. So it won't automatically populate. I just got to click that refresh button. And then it says like, oh, some citations have been modified. Do you want us to update them? And I'll say, yep. Or wait, you've modified the citation. Yeah, so I want to keep that modification since the in-text one, but it changed that to 90 from whatever the correct number was, 86 or something like that. Yeah, and so Google Docs has the same feature with adding the Zotero citations as well. Yeah, I don't know if you have any questions about that. Yep, yeah, you can change the font for the whole thing. It's just the same as any Word document where you can just change the normal so that you can have your headings and everything. And maybe that would be a heading one. And it automatically does the hanging indent for you and puts it in double space, but you can easily change that. Usually for a manuscript, they would want it to be double space, but maybe you want it to be single, so you can change that. But for APA style, the hanging indent is expected, so I wouldn't change that. Yeah, because it looks like Times New Roman, so it did change. So you can easily kind of change that to the whatever normal is. Oh, why did it? This is a Microsoft Word thing, not a Zotero thing, but it's interesting that that changed to not what the normal is. Why was this? Why did I start with Times New Roman? I don't know. I'm just surprised that it didn't. Because usually when I start a new Word doc, it'll be fully brief. Interesting. All right. So yeah, so that's kind of Zotero in a nutshell. We've got a whole bunch of different folders here. So I already talked a bit about using it for images. I find very useful because it gives you that link for the image so you can easily cite later. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when you save images, you find funny pictures or whatever, you're like, oh, this will be great in my presentation. You download it, but then you're like, okay, but where did I get that from? Using Zotero right off the bat really helps with that, to make sure that you're actually citing where you got resources from.
You're so fast.
I know. I think last time I had a lot of questions, which slowed it down. And we do usually have the activity of having people download it and show me their problems. Does anybody have? So I know one of you mentioned that you've used Zotero before. Is there any specific questions that you might have? One of the really great features about Zotero is that it is an open source program. So people are constantly taking the code and tweaking it. Somebody made it available for LaTeX. Don't really know much about LaTeX, but they made it work with that program. And there's a lot of videos online. So anytime you have a question that's kind of out of the box, I'll just go to Google and be like Zotero, and then I'll just type in whatever convoluted question or idea that I have that I want to see if it's possible. And oftentimes you'll find either a forum where people are talking about it or a video where people are showing how to go about doing that idea. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any other features that people might be interested in seeing. Got my folders here. Okay. Yeah, well, if you have any questions, or if you download the program and you have, questions about how to go about using it, you can always either email me or book an appointment with me. I have my, on the website, there's like a little book an appointment with me button, and you can kind of just see what my availability is if you'd like. I did have somebody who was working on kind of a PhD project, and they had to change citation styles, and they had not used any citation manager software. And I was like, it's still going to be some work because all you have is the citations. You've got to input them all into the program in order to export a citation management or export a specific bibliography. So it's really a good idea to get started early, even when you're just kind of doing casual searching. Just getting familiar with the program at that stage is really, really useful. Even if you're not even working on a research project, because I've used Zotero for a variety of things in the past. Like when you're looking for a job, for instance, the whole saving of a website, a snapshot of the website is really useful, because sometimes you'll apply for a job and you're like, and then you get an interview and they take down the job ad and you're like, okay, but what is the job? Like, what skills do I have to highlight to you, right? But you'll have that snapshot saved on your computer. Same goes for looking at apartments. When I was looking for apartments here, I had it all saved in my other Zotero, my personal Zotero. And it was good too, because now that I'm going to be looking for an apartment again, I can see all the information from like previously and all my notes. And so I'm like, okay. So like you can use it for personal stuff too. It's really great. Yeah. So I don't know if there's any questions or comments or anything you wish we covered. Anything you wish we didn't cover? Pardon? Okay. Yeah, so you can go to Zotero login. Use passwords saved in your Zotero, sure. This is how I keep track of what my passwords are. It's like, there's no way. Okay, log into Zotero. So when you log into the Zotero, I actually, unfortunately, one of the things about Zotero is the storage is not the greatest. So I did upgrade it. I think it was like $20 myself personally, but like I said before, it does keep those links too. So even if you don't have the full text downloaded on your computer, you still have the link to the article easily accessible. Oh, so I'll go back to your question. How do you add people to the Zotero group? I thought that's what you said. Okay. So this is what it looks like here. And you can see here, it's just basically, I can easily look at all of my different folders and access some of my articles here. So it's basically on the cloud as well as on my computer. So if I click on groups, shows the list of the different groups I have. So I could click maybe create a new group, or I could manage the members of an existing group. Generally, I make most of my groups private because they're just for private research projects that I'm working on. But I know that there are public groups out there where it's like, resources for X, and then you can just populate resources for there and, subscribe to those lists as well. So if I create a new group, yeah, I could just create that group. So this public closed where people can see the resources. So I imagine if I were to create a public list of resources, I'd probably want to make it closed membership because I'd be hesitant and wouldn't want to keep managing people adding random resources to the list. So you don't know if they're going to get inappropriate or not too. And then there's the private membership. So that's usually what I do. You can create your group. So we made it private. So library reading, made it for any group member. And editing, so any group member, I usually do that. File editing, save settings. Did I click that? Yep, okay. So, oops. Update roles. Okay, so send more invitations. So you just gotta send it to their email. And you have to make sure that you're using whatever email that they use for Zotero. I think it won't work if you're using a different email. So I use my personal email for Zotero, but some people will use their USask emails, for instance. Yeah, that's how it is done. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the notes I talked briefly about before, but you can kind of add some notes. So basically like adding a note if you have like say a post-it on a printed article, just kind of adding notes, this article talks about or has some this is a picture, just for example. This article includes statistics on the demographics of ... And you can kind of highlight different things and just kind of including your notes, so you have your notes associated with that specific article. So sometimes I've done it so many different ways in the past. Sometimes you'll create like a Word document where you kind of create your own annotated bibliography where you've got the citation and then you've got your own kind of notes about what you thought, but you could just easily do that within Zotero instead. And then if you are in a group library, those will sync through, I'm pretty sure, for other people. Pardon? Okay. You can insert a link, change the font if I really wanted. Oh, I can't see here we go, the chat. Can you export your notes? That's a good question. That is something that I would Google. Let me see, edit in a separate window. Because, oh, that's actually something I didn't talk about today at all. But you can export your library or export, say, a specific group of articles as an RAS file, which is the file type that is used by a lot of different citation management software. So sometimes I'll do that just to create that backup. So if you're ever working on a synthesis review, for example, if you go to a specific database, you'll download a bunch of articles as an RAS file. I often say, keep that RAS file as backup so that you have that evidence of, how many articles you downloaded, et cetera, from that resource, and then import them into Zotero. But I think that there's different, that's something we could check out as well. So let's see. Export items. Yeah, oh, export notes. And export files. So if I wanted, I could export the files as well as the annotations. Or just export the citations themselves, the metadata, which is the data about the data. Yeah. So that would probably export, if I decided I wanted to export that probably as an Excel document, it would be an XLS document maybe, and it would have probably that column with all of those notes that I made. Yeah. Yeah, I don't use them a whole lot, but you could use them if you wanted to search for a specific, yeah, if you say, for instance, read a resource and there was something in it that you really wanted to be able to find all the resources with that specific thing in it. Or for instance, if you wanted to, yeah, I haven't really used tags, but it's just a way of finding the different resources. So let's just say, sure again. So like basically in this little search box here, I could search the title, or I could search all fields and tags. So if I wanted to search, although sure, it's probably, oh, it only came up with this. I guess sure is not that a common word in academia. It's a common word in common language, but so it would make it searchable for that. So another thing you could maybe say like, oh, lit review, this would be great for the beginning of my paper. And then you can search all the articles that at some point you must have thought were good for your lit review. And just make sure that you are making it distinct enough that you're not searching titles as well, or it wouldn't be found in the title. So I said lit review instead of literature review. So if I searched literature review, there would be a whole bunch of different literature reviews that I have saved. I'm gonna delete these before I forget. So search terms, so you're asking about the tags, or? Yeah, so you can just search anything really. So if I wanted to search, artificial intelligence, hopefully, oh, actually I'm searching within this one folder right now. So I can go into my library, intelligence, and I'll find those 2 articles that we found today, and any other articles had I saved them. And it looks like they came with some of their own tags too that they pulled from the website. Avatars. Huh. So you can always delete them if you don't like them. Future of medicine. It's interesting because a lot of times these tags will be, I think they're pulling them from the author supplied keywords a little bit. So sometimes they're not necessarily, they're not a controlled vocabulary like you see in databases. So I would just, if I were to use tags, I'd probably use my own I wouldn't necessarily rely on the ones that were provided by the authors. Like for instance, one person might say artificial intelligence, another person might say AI as their keyword. Yeah, robots, it's pretty cool. Search robots and see. This is the only one that has robots. Not my area of research, but that's probably why. Oh, tools, sure. Okay, ooh, what is this? I don't even know what this is. Create timeline. What? Huh, this is just terrifying. Okay, oh, is it for when I downloaded specific resources? Interesting. Yeah, because I would have downloaded that and nope. Would I have? Downloaded some of those in January. So maybe it's when the resources were created. Interesting. Yeah, I have no idea what this is about. I'd have to Google to understand that. But tools, yeah. Oh, so the browser connector, I guess they have that tool there. The add-ons would be like the word add-on. Developer, this is all fancy because it's an open source code. I have no idea what that's about. And then there's the help, but I haven't really used this help. I'll just Google if I need a specific, if I have any specific problem. Generally speaking, the most important of these would be, well, there's the export library and import library. So those would be if you wanted to, again, create that Excel file, but also if you have a file of RIS file, for instance, that you download it from a database, you can import that there. Although you can also drag and click, or click and drag just to import that as well. And then there's these two, the copy citation and copy bibliography. So those are the quick way that I showed you at the very beginning. You know, you just copy a bibliography to impress your supervisor, but you're not yet necessarily using that for your actual paper because it requires more work than using the plugin. And then there's the preferences. So this is the feature that's really useful, where it tells you, it lets you adjust what your preferences are. Now that's only for if you are doing that copy bibliography thing. If you're actually in your Microsoft Word document or on Google Docs, it'll still ask you what citation style you want. So if I go in here, because like when we were making that initial add citation, it asked what citation style. And I can also change it after the fact. So if I want it to be, I don't really know Chicago, so I'll say Chicago. Yeah, and it changed it all to Chicago style. Or it changed the references. I don't think it changed this. Actually, I have no idea what's at Chicago. Oh, author date. That looks a little too similar, I can't tell. Oh, it removed the comma. So it must have changed it to that style. But then this is the one I manually did. So I would have to change that manually to whatever that citation style requires. Ooh, American Chemical. So it's got the little numbers, especially if you're using a citation style that requires numbers. I remember in my undergrad color coding everything because I'm trying to figure out, because as I'm rearranging my paper, I'm like, okay, but what number citation is this now? I had all my highlighters out and I was color coding all my references. It's like, this just does it automatically. I mean, this didn't exist back then. Oh, man. Just like thinking about how easy this is. so much better. Yeah.
Well, I think that's phenomenal. Thank you so much. If there's no particular questions, I think that I will stop the recording. And just a reminder to everyone that if you do have any questions, email me and I can connect you to Helen Power, or find her directly, College of Engineering Liaison Librarian, easy to find. And yeah, so if you have any questions or if you're stuck or you just want a little bit more feedback from someone who's not online or you can't find the answer on Google, Helen might be able to help you out. And with that, thank you.
Thank you.